Hello, hola, hola. Welcome, everybody, to Two Girls in a Pod. I'm Sharon.
I'm Christy.
We are so excited. September 15th is the start of Hispanic Heritage Month, which is kind of a cool thing, just because it's kind of the blending, I think, of a lot of cultures and stuff. And it's a rich culture. You know what I mean?
It is. And I believe this is the first year for the Latin Heritage Festival here in Colorado Springs. I hadn't heard about it before, but we attended that yesterday, and in celebration, I think that is pretty cool.
Yeah, lots of food trucks.
Lots, yes.
It's all about the food and the music.
Mm-hmm.
Well, they did have the wrestlers too. So the lucha wrestlers, which is kind of cool.
Yeah, they were going to have some other live performers in that too. I know that for the time that we were there, it seemed like there weren't the live performers, but they did have like the horses and that they brought in. So that was really cool.
Yeah, the cool thing about it is when you look at, and then that's part of the Mexican culture, is the riders with their big sombreros and the way they dress and the horses themselves, beautiful, beautiful horses. And in this instance, the horses danced to the music. So it was really a cool experience for that.
Yeah.
It was a nice thing. And, it made us start to think my background. So my ethnic background is I'm Spanish from Spain and Native American. Those are my two major or my two biggest DNA stuff. When you go do your little DNA testing and stuff. So for me, that culture is such an important thing, and to be able to be in such a rich culture, but also to be able to identify the differences within that umbrella term of Hispanic or Latino or Latina. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of a really cool thing because you can kind of take a little bit from all of those cultures.
And I think that was really cool, the way that they're doing the Latin Heritage Festival, because it encompasses more than just Mexico. It's Spain, and there's some other ones in there, I know.
Central and South America, the Caribbean, mm-hmm. which is all part of that, when the Spaniards came down and they were kind of a little bit of bad boys back in the day. We cannot tell a lie. We will not change the history of it. It was, they conquered. That was back in the day. That's what they did. And some of it wasn't really a history that they probably want to talk too much about,
right.
But it's the history of the people. My lineage is once again the Spaniards coming in, and then we're called mestizos because we have the mixed blood, and that's what that means. But it's kind of a cool thing because, I grew up in the culture, and the place I'm from, it has a lot of the Spanish culture and a lot of Mexican culture. And just to see the similarities, but all the differences within those cultures, and how do we embrace those different things? I think that's really the cool thing to me. And for you, that isn't your ethnic background.
No. So my background, my family comes from Germany and Holland and South Wales and all that. So I didn't have any real experience. The area that I grew up in the Quad Cities, there is a large mix of people there, I think, different cultures and that. So I'm grateful for that. I think it was a great place to grow up, but it wasn't until I came to Colorado that I got introduced to more of that culture and started learning Spanish and those kind of things. Getting exposed to even how they do the dances out here. Concerts are not just concerts, it was dances. So it was really cool because I got exposed to that different type of music and that, and really enjoyed it. I went to a lot of concerts, dances, I should say, like Los Tucanes. I've been to see
Los
them.
Tucanes they are just such an energetic band, and their music has got that really nice vibe to it for me.
Yeah, it's got great energy, and those dances were so much fun.
Because you go to a concert, and so in some of these venues, you have to understand, they have tables, but they're to the side, and that's where you sit. But you're up by the stage, and the dance floor is there, and you're listening, and it's almost immersive in a different way.
Oh, definitely. It's a dance hall, it's so... It's really cool because, like I said, you go and to listen to the music and that, but to have that venue where you can dance too, that was really cool for me.
And don't you find, like in the concert I've been to, because then we went to Tobias Rene, who is a different kind of music than Los Tucanes.
I believe out of New Mexico.
So he's a New Mexico performer. to Los Tucanes is out of Mexico.
Mm-hmm.
And then we went and saw Shakira in concert, who's Colombian, and with that Middle East vibe to it, which is just, oh my goodness, she is amazing. If you ever get to see her in concert, her energy level is unbelievable.
It's well worth it. She's very engaging.
Yes, just high energy, amazing. And then Pitbull and Enrique. Enrique is more Spanish. I think they're Spaniard, if I'm not mistaken.
I'm not
Pitbull is Cuban.
Yeah. But all of it together, the music is so wonderful. We've been to see them together in concert a couple of times.
Yes. And it's so different to hear the variations in the music. And oh my gosh, Pitbull, I swear somebody winds him up. He's constantly bouncing and moving and just, oh my goodness.
Full of energy.
But I think the really cool thing is that those variations, it's rich to me. There is such a richness to the music. There's a richness to the food, to the culture, the Latin culture. Latin and Hispanic, they use interchangeably sometimes, but that really familia-based family.
Yeah. So it feels very warm and just, I don't know, just feels good.
Another term we use is when we say somebody is muy gente. And, when we go to Puerto Vallarta, that is a term that we will often use, it's muy gente. It's very warm. It's very personable. It's the proper translation. I always tell people, when you're translating language, sometimes there's not true translation because you can't put the feel of the word into the translation.
Mm-hmm.
So that's always very interesting. And the foods are very different.
Mm-hmm.
We're looking at going to Puerto Rico for the first time. My Puerto Rican clients talk to me about the food. The food is very different. They use a lot of plantains and a lot of different stuff, different flavors for their foods, which I'm kind of excited about.
I hear it is the land of plantains, which I am not thrilled about, but I'm sure I just have not had them made right. That's what I'm counting on.
Well, we decided that about the guaves too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Neither one of us like those. And then this last time we went to Puerto Vallarta, oh my God, they must know how to pick them, I guess. Oh, we didn't. Because amazing. And then what did we have yesterday?
We had guava yesterday.
In a drink.
Yeah.
And oh my goodness.
Yeah. At the Latin Heritage Festival, that was so good.
It was delicious. So even things like that, the variations in the foods and the flavors, and just, you can tell it if when people often say that Southwest Tex-Mex flavors and things like that. Mm-hmm. And so for you, even coming into my family was very different than the culture that you knew, because you were more around the Mexican culture, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I could understand them a little bit better, because that's what when I started learning Spanish, it was through the Migrant Center in Palisade, Colorado. So it was different hearing that dialect in the valley. I wasn't used to it. So there were a lot of words I couldn't identify.
I know. And I didn't understand that because she did speak Spanish. But when we go to my parents and my parents were talking, sometimes she would say, well, what does that word mean?
Yeah.
And once again, we have, even though it's all a Spanish language, there's different dialects within it. And the reason the dialects changed is simply due to the fact of where the Spaniards landed, and then they incorporated with the native culture there.
Yes. And a good example of that, I promise you, if you go to the South, you will hear terms you are not familiar with. They have their own dialect. That's where my family is from. My dad was from Missouri. My mom was from Alabama. So there is a whole dialect within that culture down there.
When she says that, she's not kidding. Sometimes we would go down to Alabama and they were talking. I would say, what are they talking about? What does that word even mean? What does this mean? Mm-hmm. So once again, they're speaking English, I think. No.
Yeah.
We always tease about that. But that's what it is. There's different words. There's different dialects. And oftentimes people will lump the Spanish and they'll say all Spanish is the same. Well, no, just like all English isn't the same. And I think that's the other thing that's the richness of cultures, is that those little variations But always at the end of the day, we're more alike than we are different. But those are just little variations that you see in those dialects and stuff like that. But for you, food, because that was a little bit different too, when like with my family and how they cooked versus.
Hmm. Yeah, even now, I mean, there are different places that we visit, and you can tell a difference. I think we talk a lot in the differences in the chili and how they're made. And I love the way they make it in the valley. I think that it's really good.
We like our chile morido.
Yeah.
But it's so just little variations. And then, there's a restaurant here that's Brazilian, isn't it? The one that has all the meats.
Mm, yeah. I forget the name of it.
Yeah. And we're not that much into all the different meats and stuff like that. Ooh, lengua? No, that's tongue.
Yeah, I'm not into that either.
There's certain things, yeah, no, ain't gonna happen. Because lengua is something that's eaten in my culture as well, but not by me. I don't care. And, I don't know what it is. And, when you think about it, tripe is another big thing. When you look, a lot of menudo and things like that, pozol, all of those different foods. It's part of my culture as well, but it's not something that I really eat.
Yeah, I think we pick and choose as with anything.
That's something that was really cool and something I really liked when I would go back and visit my parents, and all my siblings would say the same thing is if my mom knew of that dish that we liked, my mom would make those dishes. Bizcochitos for the holidays, which is a cookie that has more of an anise flavor to it.
They're really good.
Bizcochitos. Oh, yeah. You can do it with anise or not. Yeah, mom would make cookies and stuff like that.
Her sweet rice.
Yes. We call it sweet rice. I'm not even sure if that's the correct term.
Well, it's rice and it's sweet and it's really good.
That was our big thing when we would go back and mom would have that. And it's in those foods, that you really, the flavors and how much it changes. Keep talking about this, and in a few minutes, we're going to be wanting lunch or dinner or something.
Well, that's what's so cool, I think, is that culture comes alive through foods, through all those flavors, and through all the even the music and everything.
I used to, because like I said, I used to work in the San Luis Valley, and the community I worked in had a high Mexican population because we had a lot of the migrant workers there as well. And so someone would be my client and my clients, and they would love to talk about food. Mm-hmm. And fast forward to today, and my clients, it doesn't matter what culture they're from, but, we're talking about the Latin Hispanic culture today. But they would talk to me about, oh my God, I want to make you this dish. And we put all, and they're like, no, that won't work for me. In a lot of the Mexican dishes, they put a lot of the fish and stuff like that, which, Colorado, we're landlocked here. we have certain fishes here, but no, I've learned to appreciate it. I really have a lot of different fish and stuff like that. But it's also what you're raised with. And then, what's really cool is then you get to go out and explore the world, and you get to taste all of these different foods. When we went to Barcelona, same thing. The food there was very different.
Yeah, we have friends right now that are in Spain, and we're just posting yesterday that they visited the oldest restaurant in the world, something like that. It's been open since 1725 or something
like that.
Yeah.
And their main thing there is pork. Mm-hmm. And, when we went to Barcelona, we were told that they'd use a lot of pork. The richness of the cultures, and to be able to embrace those cultures and to see the value in the culture. And it is so amazing to have this month to kind of showcase those different things, to showcase the people from cultures and how they have ascended, climbed up the ladders, whatever it is.
Well, and even blended, because it brings so much more, I think, through the experience of learning those cultures and that. And I think that it's really cool to see how, even like with the Latin Heritage Festival, it's several different within that it's bringing people together.
Yes. And I think that's the cool thing, is that it is through music and food oftentimes that we do come together.
Learning about one another.
Yes. It's amazing the conversations you could have over good food, and even just that to hear, in it to watch and observe those things that are really valuable to people. And so I think that's something that's been amazing. As I was sitting here thinking too, when I go back in my memories, when we would get married in the Spanish culture, we do the marcha, which is led usually by, you pick certain people to lead that. And it's this dance that moves around the whole entire area.
You sort of create a chain.
Yes. And it's this amazing dance.
Which we got to do.
Yes, that was so cool. Rose Villapando led that for us. It was amazing. My parents participated in it. And that's the really cool thing. One of the things I always loved was our weddings. And the reason I loved them is we always had dances afterwards. And I loved dancing with my parents. And my parents, oh my God, they loved dancing.
Yeah.
And doing cumbias and things like that. Just those dances that brought us together, the music, the feel of it, the energy of it in this amazing celebration, because our weddings are very big and there's lots of people. But that is such a rich feeling. And I'm so grateful for those memories, because I remember dancing with my parents, and that I remember dancing with my parents when we got married. We had that dance. We did some of that traditional cultural pieces to it, which I thought was really cool, because I think for my parents, that was a representation to them too.
Definitely. And it's really fascinating just to hear about those different cultures and see how those traditions look and everything. I'm kind of excited because next year we'll be attending the first quinceañera I've ever been to.
Yes. And, quinceañeras are really part of the Mexican culture, but I think that we're seeing the Mexican Americans who are still keeping that tradition alive, which is really cool.
Well, exactly. I mean, you have so many blended families and stuff now, so it's bringing that culture into it. And so I feel like that more people are embracing the idea and stuff because they're learning about that. That's really cool.
It is. And I had one of my clients who is not of the culture at all, very Caucasian, but she was so excited because her friend asked her to participate in the quinceañera, and we talked about that. And she goes, "Oh my God, this is like big," and just the honor that she had.
I guess we assume that most people know what a quinceañera is, but
oh, quinceañera is when the girl turns 15.
Yeah. From
huge.
The pictures that I've seen of different ones, and that they're, very big production. I mean, just
yes,
the dress is a whole thing.
If you think of like the debutantes, those balls and things like that, except it's in the Mexican culture when they turn 15. Debutante balls are more people, but this is just one person's celebration of turning 15.
I mean, the closest that I come to within what I grew up knowing about is the Sweet 16, but it's nowhere near, I don't think, the production that a quinceañera is.
Yeah, it's very important to the culture. I think it is so cool. And you're right, because of blended families, you're seeing more and more of that. And which is really neat, because once again, that's such an important part of that culture. Yeah. Another piece of the Mexican culture that I really like is Dia de los Muertos, the Day of the Dead, which, that's fast approaching, way faster than I want. It's like almost here.
And that's a time of remembrance.
But it was really cool for us because we were in Cabo at the time, and it was just amazing. They did a production, so they did this whole dance thing about it, and just the power of that performance, the representation of this piece of their culture, their heritage. And I can't imagine people not knowing what Dia de los Muertos are. Come on, everybody's watched Coco. Man, was that a good movie?
Yeah.
Tugged at your heartstrings and everything.
Right.
It was one of I think did a really good thing about that though, but it's a day of remembrance. It is the day that we invite those people back. And if you don't know what that is, they have food and drink for them. And it's the day that they truly remember them. And it's one of those things that they put a consciousness into that, and they're very present with it. And you can feel the richness of that, which I think is amazing, because, one of the things when I do grief and loss work is I always tell people, don't let somebody die twice. And what I mean by that is, their body is gone from here, but it's when we don't remember them. It's when we're not talking about them. That's when they truly cease to exist. And this celebration is a time where they don't let that happen. So for me, I love the beauty of that because it's something that I've truly believed in forever. Let's keep them relevant.
Right.
And that's what that does.
Remembering the life and the relationship and what it has brought to you and all of that, rather than being so fixated, focused on the death.
And it's interesting because, I had heard of Dia de los Muertos and everything like that, but it wasn't until we actually were there and we got to experience it.
Yeah.
What was that like for you? Because
it was fascinating. And I mean, I always love all of the color that's incorporated with that culture anyway. But just in that celebration alone, it was really cool because you could feel that the importance of that, the almost sacredness of it. I really enjoyed it.
And you could totally feel that connectedness that they had to those members that were no longer here physically.
Yes.
And you're right. The sacredness of that was just amazing.
Mm-hmm.
I think what's so cool is being able to find the value in those things and just being respectful of why they're so important. And I always think, because, we like to watch Josh Gates, and when he goes to these countries and when they're doing their rituals or their ceremonies or whatever it is, I love how engaged and present he is. And you can see that he truly appreciates whatever it is they're doing, even though it's not part of his culture, or he may not even understand it, but he understands the value of that.
To that people, yes.
Which is one of the reasons I really like watching him.
Yeah.
It's just amazing. In any show he's connected to, there is something about that. And, we've seen him go into different parts of Mexico and Central and South America and the different tribes there or the indigenous people, we should call them more, and how those things are still relevant and important to them.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's the other piece that we forget about these cultures, whether it's the Mexican culture, the Spaniard culture, and we're talking about cultures here in the United States, Puerto Rican, whatever they are, is that it is a blending of people.
Yes.
When you think about that, I am not just of Spaniard heritage. I am of indigenous people heritage as well. And the blending of those two created another ethnicity almost, another culture.
Well, I think that's one of the reasons it's so important to learn about those different cultures is because then you are able to understand the connectedness of all.
Yes.
Because when you look at those origins and the blending of those people and how everything looks today, we wouldn't be here if it wasn't for those historical events that happened or, and the blending that happened back then, So I think it's really important to look at those things, understand maybe it's not your culture because that's not where you're from, but understanding that through getting the knowledge about them, you understand the connectedness of all.
Absolutely. And I think that just goes to show you Europe is not around the corner, when you think about it. But yet people in the United States have connections to Europe, Africa, Asia, all of the other continents.
Yes.
But yet we're here. And even within that, we create a different sense of culture and values based on those cultures. You know what I mean?
Yes.
And so I think that's the thing. But when you're a Spanish speaking group, it started in Spain because that was where, and they just came down. And, once again, when we look at the history, it wasn't pretty all the time. We all know the story of the Inca, the Aztec, and the Mayans and how it didn't turn out well for them.
Yeah.
And that was Spaniards. But then they blended. And that's why we have that Spanish language that is in so many different places. It was just simply due to the way in which they set out to conquer and do things like that. Mm-hmm. So I think that's kind of a really...
And as people learn to communicate with one another, how you get those different dialects, because there's all this shading that comes in from the different, the indigenous to the people that came in and how, like I said, they had to learn to communicate.
Exactly. And, I think the other thing, what made me think of that is that There are some words that I've used since I was little in Spanish, and I never knew the English word for.
Mm-hmm.
And then I would ask you, I said, well, what does that mean in English? Or does it have a word in English? So for us, we use the term toallita, toalla, things like that, which is, I learned toallita is a washcloth.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of think toallita has a little bit of a neater little ring to it.
Then washcloth.
But I didn't know what a cómoda was either in English.
That's a dresser?
Yes. But it's funny because they're words that were so much a part of how I grew up, and we never used an English word for them. And I don't even remember if I ever heard those words in English at school or anything. I guess they weren't talking about washcloths at school or dressers.
Yeah.
But anyway, basura, things like, which is
dirt.
Yeah. Things like that. Those words, it was so interesting to me because I didn't even realize I used them all the time in Spanish. And then I remember one day you asked me what I was saying.
Yeah, I don't even remember what you were talking about.
We were talking about the toallita, and then you said, What are you saying? And I was sort of like, a toallita. And you're there, but what is that? What do you mean? Because I must have told her to go get the toallita. And she's looking at me like, I don't know what that is, but I didn't know how to say it in English.
Yeah.
And I love it. I love the language. I wish I was more fluent in it. But when they tell you if you don't use it, you will lose it.
Absolutely.
There is such a truth about that. And growing up, we didn't use it because, once again, it wasn't always that acceptable in schools early on. So my parents switched from Spanish and English to English and Spanish. Both my parents were bilingual, completely bilingual. My grandparents were also, except my grandma, my mom's side. She would tell me that she did not speak English. So remember, she's talking all Spanish to me, that she doesn't speak English.
Mm-hmm.
And she also told me so therefore I had to talk Spanish with her. And then so I turn around and Christy goes in the room and...
Yeah, she told me something in English.
She's talking to her in English. I go, Grandma, I said you didn't speak English. And she looked at me and she goes, I don't speak English to you.
Yep.
You gotta love it. And then of course, as a kid, our parents would, if they didn't want us to understand, they would use words in Spanish until we learned what that word means. And then they started spelling. And I know y'all out there saying, oh yeah, we had those parents who would spell too. Did you?
They're probably, well, no, but they're probably doing that now in front of their own kids. They're spelling everything out.
You mean to tell me your parents didn't say candy when they were trying to talk about candy, but didn't want you to know?
Well, if they did, I don't remember it.
Oh, I do. I remember those things. I don't remember other things, but some of those things I do remember. And, I think once again, that's one of those things that just that richness. And whoever you are, whatever your ethnic background is, to embrace that ethnicity as part of who you are and stuff like that. Because everybody has a culture, even though you don't realize it.
Maybe you don't have, like a lot of rituals that you do, traditions or that you celebrate all of the time. But yeah, I mean, and kind of finding out where your ancestors come from, it's interesting in that. So, maybe you want to embrace some of the traditions and that of those cultures and that.
Well, I think it was interesting as I had a client a while back and she found out that her family was actually part of the Norse group. Mm-hmm. And so I thought it was cool because then she really started to research it and really loved a lot of what it represented and stuff like that. So she went and got this amazingly cool tattoo to help represent that. So, and that's another thing that you will often see is those tattoos and they mean something. Y'all know we like our UFC. And it's interesting to me because you can see the Hawaiians have certain tattoos that represent them. The ones from New Zealand have a certain type of tattoo that comes around their waist and down their legs. Mm-hmm. And it even like with that, there's these things that you see that are identifying things for them.
Yeah.
It's not just because they got a tattoo. It's because it represents their culture.
Yeah.
And that's been such a huge thing when you look at historically how what's that old lady that's still doing tattoos? She's like 900, but she does authentic tattoos with the stick
Yeah.
in that. I mean,
Tapping
just,
them in.
yeah, and they're thinking, I don't know, I like tattoos, but that just might be a little outside my comfort zone.
Right.
But could you imagine getting a tattoo by somebody who's been around doing tattoos for like 70 years or something?
Nope.
I said, imagine. I said, go do it. But even things like that, what are those things, even in those cultures, that are really cool?
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? The other thing that I think is really cool in the Latin cultures, Hispanic cultures, is the accordion. You know, when you go to watch these bands, they'll often have accordion players.
Mm-hmm. That is a prominent instrument within their music.
In the Latin, yeah.
Yeah.
Which was really cool because my grandfather on my mom's side, my grandpa played music by ear. So he played accordion, harmonica, and I believe piano, but all by ear, but had this amazing, amazing accordion. And, you know, I thought, how cool is that?
Yeah.
Music can be such an important part of that. You know, like I said, when I was growing up, I used to think laundry was the greatest thing in the world because my mom would always be humming. And oftentimes they were Spanish songs. And she'd be humming and she looked so happy. And I thought to myself as a small child, I can hardly wait till I get to be a grown up so I can hum and do laundry because it's the best thing in the world. And then I got to be an adult and I'm there thinking, I don't even know why she did that. I didn't find it as joyful as my mom did.
My mom didn't mislead me on that. She hummed all the time and still does, in fact. I mean, pretty much, you know, so it wasn't like she was joyfully doing laundry or that. She just hummed all the time.
No, I remember my mom doing that. I was there like, oh my goodness. Yeah. But part of your guys' culture is the church culture where there's a lot of music involved with that as well.
Oh yeah, for sure. Both my parents dabbled a little bit with different instruments. Anyway, my mom played drums every church service. My dad played mandolin. He played a banjo before that. So yeah, my mom played some keyboard. So
yeah, so I think that was that's such an interesting thing. You know, music was part of, I remember having music on, a lot of Spanish music, you know, from different people. And we were talking about that yesterday because this woman that we were listening to at the festival, she had a very rich, beautiful, powerful voice. And I told you, it reminded me of Yolanda del Rio, I grew up listening to her. It's a different.
Her voice is very powerful, very rich.
Yes. And it just moves you to hear that. You know, and I think even if you don't understand the words, it's the voice itself. And that was so amazing just listening to her. And I think we're going to post a small video on our Facebook page.
Yeah.
So you can hear that voice and just the richness of the voice itself, which I think was just really nice. And just, there's something so rewarding in all of those things.
I know for me, even occasionally I sing now and then, but I even love singing those songs. Just, I mean, because they just have such a powerful richness and just, it really hits your soul. And like I said, even if you don't understand the words or that, it's just something in the music and everything that I enjoy even singing those kind of songs.
Because you do more of Selena's music, but not that's, I imagine you could probably do other ones, but that one, and she had such a powerful voice. She was such a force to be reckoned with. So it was really sad that, you know, that ended so early for her.
Yes.
Those things, you know, then, you know, I was also thinking here, you know, we have, not only do we have Dia de los Muertos, but for us, you know, when we go to the holiday was such a big time for, we talked about the bizcochitos, but we do a lot of empanaditas. Chrissy's not a fan of empanaditas. But what is it about it that you don't like?
The mincemeat.
Yes. So it's with the mincemeat with a little bit of rum or brandy. I can't even remember now. But anyway, that was something. Oh my gosh.
There's not enough rum to make me like those, but I'm glad you all enjoy them.
But you know, the thing is once again, It was the smell.
Mm.
It was just the smell of that thing. And you knew that was the festivity time. And, God love my mother because, when you have as many children as she does, do you know how many empanaditas she had to make? Seriously. But not only that, watching her do her tortillas and trying to teach us how to do those tortillas. And like I said, to this day, I cannot roll around tortilla to save my life. And she would just look and shake her head, look and shake her head. And then when my friend from Japan came and wanted to do it, and Miwa tried to roll out the tortilla too, it didn't turn out well. But, my mom was a good sport about it. The flavors of the holidays, you know what I mean? Just all of those things that come together. And oftentimes I think in the holidays is where you see some of those cultural components that come through, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And so for me, it's so nice that even in doing this podcast about this, it's bringing up those memories. It's bringing up those feelings of that joyful feelings. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Those reminders, enchiladas, which is, oh my goodness, we used to love those too.
I have fully embraced enchiladas. Sometimes it's what your heart's pulled to too, that I think that within your, you learn about different cultures and traditions and stuff like that. And sometimes you want to incorporate those in. Maybe it's not a part of what you grew up with or that. I mean, like I said, where my family comes from, but I still really don't know that much about the German culture and traditions and things like that, because that wasn't a part of how my family, I wasn't raised that way. Now the Southern culture and that kind of thing, I mean, that was prominent in my upbringing. So I understand that piece. But sometimes, like I say, I think, you get exposed to different cultures and learn about different things, and there's things about that you want to embrace in your own life, and I think it's cool that you can do that.
Because not only does Christy embrace the music, she loves Taco Tuesday.
Yeah, I sure do.
Nachos.
Yep.
And enchiladas.
Yep.
Green chili.
Yep.
And, we're so excited because we got our green chili this year, and that is such a big thing. Green chili was such a big thing for our family. We had chili a lot, whether it was the chile morrido, the green chili, chili pequi, chili caribe, all of those different kinds of chilies, that just the slight variations on those flavors.
And I just even love to smell them roasting the green chili.
Oh, I know. Oh my goodness, it's that time of year and you just go out. Of course, our car still, just so you know, though, if you ever go buy roasted green chili and you put it in your car,
it's going to smell like a delicious breakfast for days.
Weeks. Our car still has, our friend was, when June was here, where they're like, okay, June, we're sorry, but our car's going to smell a little bit like green chili. Sandra, all of them, it's like, okay, sorry. But, it does that aroma just permeates, which I find very delightful. I'm not sure if everybody else would.
They haven't started making car scents in that, but they...
Oh my goodness.
Perhaps.
There's an idea. Somebody out there listening who's creative. A little bit of chili, Come on now. Wouldn't that be delicious?
Right.
And I think that's what it is. I was going to say, I got a little sidetracked, but when you said about the German thing, it's so cool because our friend Sylvia is German. And so even when she talks about that, the holiday stuff for her and that to me is kind of really cool. But we love learning about other cultures.
Right.
That is something that I feel like we really embrace and bring into our lives. And if it's something in another culture that we say, oh my God, if it's a food or whatever, yeah, we'll do that. Once again, we talk about that connectedness. Mm-hmm. And I think that's the thing that connects us. And oftentimes it is food and music and things like that, because you can listen to those songs. We listen to a lot of world music sometimes too.
Yeah.
And it'll be like, oh my goodness, I really love that. How cool is that? And you learn about, so I'll listen, well, where does that music come from? And then we get that cultural component to it as well.
We have a huge appreciation for like Bollywood dance and those kinds of things. I thought it was really interesting, our past episode with Srijana, and she talked about her experience with dance and doing Bollywood and stuff like that.
Yes.
It's so interesting to hear those stories.
Oh, absolutely. So, I think overall for me, it's kind of cool. I think that oftentimes people want representation.
Mm-hmm.
If you're a small child and you're looking to find those people that represent you, whether it's through your color, your orientation, your gender, your belief, whatever it is, you want that representation.
Mm-hmm.
Then you have this thing of, I can look up to these people and aspire to be that. There is a special on Netflix with John Leguizamo. I can't remember the name of it, but it is really it's an amazing piece that he does on culture, on that, once again, that representation. Why do you want that representation? And I think everybody out there who is of a different ethnic background or whatever it is can look and say, I want somebody to be able to look like me, my gender, my color, my background, my religion, whatever those things are. I think they want that representation. And I think that's what's really cool about whether it's Black History Month, Women's Month, Latin, Hispanic Heritage Month, Indigenous Peoples Month. All of those things are important. We have celebrations of St. Patrick's Day for the Irish. All of those representations, I think, become those things that help people aspire, and that you can then look up to these people and know, yes, there's somebody that looks like me, has my hair or my color or whatever that is. So I think for people, that's why these months and talking about these things are important, because to embrace the richness of our ethnic background, I think, is important.
Yeah, it looks like, I believe it's John Leguizamo's Latin History for Morons.
Yeah, Latin History for Morons. Don't let that title throw you off, people. It really is a very powerful.
I don't know if you call it like a little. I'm not really sure what you call it.
I'm not sure what you would call it either. It's just like a little. It's a long period, but he just does this skits and all this different stuff, and this journey he's on with his son. It is really something. If you get a chance to watch it, especially Latin culture. Latin Hispanic culture, I think, is really important to see those things.
Yeah.
So if you have time to check out, during these times that they're celebrating these cultures and these peoples, take time, learn a little bit about the cultures and things like that. Learning about other cultures and stuff only makes us more enriched.
Yes.
It really, really does. And we've had a really good time doing this. I embrace the culture, my culture. I love embracing Christy's culture, and I know you do the same.
I do.
And we learn from those cultures, and both are just as relevant. One is not more relevant than the other, but it's our ability to embrace our own culture so that we can then share that culture with others. And then they get to learn, and it becomes this wonderful, beautiful exchange.
Mm-hmm.
So once again, it is Hispanic, Latina Heritage Month. Take time, learn about those people, what their contributions have been, because there are contributions from every single culture.
Yeah.
And that is the beauty of our country, is all of the cultures we have here and that we can learn from to make us better human beings.
Yeah, and how we all contribute.
Yes, and that connectedness that we have.
Yeah.
So thank you very much for your time. And this time, instead of saying goodbye, we will say adios.
Adios.